Hey folks, thanks for coming back for another lesson. Today we're going to focus on the torso some more. Uh, Mostly today I just want to break down some construction styles that you may have seen in your adventures there, uh, in search of ways to understand drawing the human figure better. I've noticed a lot of people comprise the torso using boxes, and I wanted to attempt to break down. Uh, I wanted to attempt to break that down for you a little more in depth, because it's a little unclear as to how everything works and what parts of these boxes represent what in the actual torso themselves. So if you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe to the channel because I'm putting these videos out weekly pretty well. Um, just trying to create a back catalog of work here um, for the inevitable day when I blow up and then I can really start to affect some change in the world, making all of you better artists. So yeah, hit that subscribe button right here. Become a fan. Check me out on all the platforms you see up top here. I'm Christian Wolf Art across the board. Easy enough, right? Okay, let's make sense of these examples I've got here. So, as I was mentioning in the beginning of the video, we've all seen examples of the torso drawn in this particular style before. We've all seen, maybe we're new to it, but we've all heard of gesture lines. In today's video, I'm going to represent the spine with the gesture lines that I've drawn here. They're drawn in purple if you haven't noticed yet. And all right, just strap in and we'll get through this. I'm going to show you what I mean here, okay? So when we are thinking about the torso, as I've mentioned before, you really want to keep in the back of your mind at all times that there are that there is perspective running through your subject, which is the human body, okay? And the way I am figuring this out internally as I draw my characters is by constructing these shapes that are representing in the torso, the rib cage and the hip case. We're giving those shapes perspective so that when we inevitably etch in the finer details, you're going to have a not only anatomical and proportionate, but formed a formed object drawn in space. Okay, so with this middle example, all right, we're kind of looking down at the torso in my imagining of this example. All right, you're starting, if you've been following my videos up until now, you're starting to understand that I don't go through the trouble of drawing a single one-point perspective for every example I want to note to you guys. What I'm doing instead are drawing these fray lines like so, and we are both assuming that this point here, sorry, that line there and that line there are both going back to a single point somewhere off of our canvas. All right. So that's why I've drawn those lines there, and why I've drawn those lines there in order to give myself a natural fraying plane here as this shape comes at me. Okay, and then the same thing would be going on in 2-point perspective this way, where you've got these 2 points forming that top surface, and then those 2 lines are feeding back to a point somewhere off the canvas as well. All right. Now, is it pertinent that you always throw down a 2-point perspective grid in order to achieve the effect? No. It's just good to first and foremost understand 2-point perspective like the back of your hand, and then kind of apply it as you draw your shapes and your forms later on, because then they'll naturally have this foreshortening to them when you're constructing the boxes that represent the forms. Okay, so obviously the same thing I'm thinking in my head is happening with this box as it comes down here as well. All right, all three of those lines I just drew, I'm assuming are all going back to a point, single point somewhere off the canvas. All right, and everything underneath it is following in line with the lines that are fraying this way, and so on. These lines that fray back this way to a point off the canvas. Okay, and then you get this shape, which is sitting in perspective. All right, and I drew it that way because when I'm thinking about the torso and form, I want it to have perspective. Okay, as it comes down into this other shape down below, that's representing my hip case. Okay, the top area of this shape is going to be the top and edge of my pelvic bone, where it comes forward. All right, all this area inside here is going to be, you know, guts and organs. This is going to be the bottom of my torso, the crotch area. Okay, and everything's going to connect down into that shape that I've drawn there. That's the edge of that box, and that's going to connect down. So I don't have to do it, but if I really want to, I could say draw an X in that rib torso box. Okay, and now I've got a center point. If I find the center of that box there and write it up in perspective like its sister lines here, I get my center point writing up in foreshortening. Okay, these are the things they never break down when they show these examples in drawing books. You know, the actual thinking of the artist who's trying to break down a pretty convoluted lesson to you. Okay, now how does all this become the torso? Right, so if I knock this layer back now, we have all that information, and I actually start thinking about what everything represents. All right, so if this area at the top here is my collar, then this whole top surface of this box is going to start to change quite drastically. I know there's an area for a neck in there. I know there's an area for a collarbone in there. Just to keep things as simple as possible, I'm going to say that these two collarbones, where they fray out to the shoulders, they're going to meet in perspective with the rest of the box. Okay, and then if I follow down the box here to about the end of where the pec muscles are and where the end of the rib cage is right underneath it, I can start to pull out some forms using that shape of the box. Okay, now obviously once we understand anatomy a little bit better, we can formulate our muscles in there better. But once you know how those muscles are all wrapped around the body, and you understand your anatomy better, you will be able to use this box to construct the forms properly. And if I just keep in mind that the box is in perspective, so my forms have to be in perspective. If I keep in mind the angle of the rib cage I'm looking at as I draw it, how it's wrapping around in the body itself, you know, notice how all my lines are kind of wrapping back up into where you cannot see. All right, on that far side, even on the side closest to us. Okay, as I was mentioning in the last video, you've got your top abdomen right there. It's very small. You've got another set below it, bigger, almost twice the size. Okay, that's where your belly button is. Right? Your obliques and everything come out from your ribs. They stem from the first set of abdomen and your ribs, okay? And they form your abdomen, your obliques. They come down. They don't form much of an, like your rib cage, you know, as it's coming out and wrapping back into itself. You have to keep that in mind, and you're drawing kind of the edge of those ribs as the skin and muscle pulls over top of them. But see, I'm using that box that I originally constructed to kind of find the form of everything. So if I bring that line down to where, let's say, the love handle would wrap over top of the pelvic bone, okay, forms that V area, and now we've got an area for that third pair of abdomen muscles, okay. You do the same on the other side. It's in perspective. I'm using that box, okay. If we're looking at this torso here, we know under the obliques is that massive love handle muscle. It's coming from around the box here and wrapping over top of the pelvic bone into that V area, forming that other abdomen there, that other third pair of abdomen. There's another pair right underneath it if you've got an 8-pack. Anyways, now you've got the crotch area defined, okay, and pretty much the end of your torso. You've also got, you've got a really nice indicated area for everything. You've got this nice chunk of muscle for your love handles. You've got your obliques riding into your ribs. And behind here, you would probably see latissimus dorsi muscle wrapping in. But you might, I don't know, at this angle, you might have an arm hanging over top or something. But you get the idea. And it really sells the torso figure. You know what I mean? And oh, hold on. I guess I'm not completely done here. I should probably wrap the trapezius muscles up into the neck area, would-be neck area, and then we'll, draw a would-be throat, and then come back down to the other side. All right, and your head would sit somewhere on top of there, right? And there you have it. You have a pretty anatomical and accurate-looking torso. Obviously, I know I draw very scratchy on this channel. But you get the idea how all that works. All those contour lines moving back and forth, moving up and into the body, up and around into the body, and you can adjust as you go. All right. Now let's bring it back a titch here. Okay, back to my first examples. Notice as we've been drawing this torso, and as I've been drawing torsos for you, as I continue to, I haven't added the shoulders on. I haven't added the glute muscles or the buttocks muscles, okay? I don't want you to think of them as part of the torso. In my methodology of learning, I think that the torso, to be understood perfectly and accurately, you want to understand the rib cage and its relationship to what it's connected to, the spine and the pelvic bone, all right? The way they contort and move, they have a relationship, okay? When you add the shoulders and the glute muscles, okay, to a torso when trying to understand it as a separate part of the anatomy, it will contort and maybe mess up your understanding of it because they technically are this bridge point where, you stem off into your appendages. The reason I want to separate them from the torso itself is because every movement of the arm affects the placement of the shoulder. Every movement of the leg affects the placement of the buttocks, okay, or the glutamus, all right? So we have to keep that in mind, all right? So with these examples today, that's why I'm not drawing shoulders. That's why I'm not drawing butts. All right, I'm just trying to keep the lesson focused on how we're finding the ribs and the details in the muscles and torso around the rib cage into the pelvic area. Okay, so let's try a side view now. Give you the same kind of breakdown. Just do it over and over again, and I'll try to enforce all the ways of thinking that I've been going about doing this. All right, so obviously this is going to be our spine, right? Riding through accurately where we would have our rib cage. If this is the front of the body, and obviously this angle I've chosen is quite thin, I can draw an X through that shape to find the center, but in this case I'm going to eyeball it. I know that more so or less I want to show probably 2/3 of this shape, the foreground surface area, and then a third of it probably tuck in behind there when I'm drawing my muscles and overlaps to form the center of the shape here. All right, so I'm going to draw this again, and I'll show you what I mean. So using this shape to form a torso. All right. The shape of the rib cage, right? You've got an opening right about here. The rib cage is coming out and wrapping back into itself. All right. I'm gonna have to draw it bigger because of the shape there of the boxes. Okay, and this area right here. Remember, this shape of the rib cage is moving like this in space, coming forward at us. All right. The sternum is somewhere in front where we really can't see it, right about there. So the opening for the rib cage is probably right about here. And from this angle, the ribs start to cut back like so. Okay. So then this area, all up in here, would be the inside looking up into the rib cage. All right? In that square shape that I've initially formed. All right? So that means that my collarbone is riding somewhere like this. Right? The other collarbone on the other side you're not going to see. Somewhere here we have our pelvic bone. Remember I mentioned it was about a fist's length in between? Watch, I'll prove it. F-I-S-T-S. Fist's length. Perfect. Works like a charm. So you've got your hip case, right? As I explained to you last week, it sits in there like this. Your spine comes down through your rib cage, meets your pelvis bone, and kind of like tails in like this. Your other side of your pelvic bone would be further down like so, kind of like so. And I'll black out the far side. And it's kind of like that. All right? And that's what those shapes are representing more or less. Okay? What's going on there? So now if I take that and I dumb that down and we draw forms that form the body or lines that form the figure, I'll show you how all of that works. So without drawing the shoulders, you would have an overlap in the back like this, which would come into your armpit area. That would be your latissimus dorsi. From it, you have your trapezius muscle, which rides up into your neck and would overlap all of that business where your collarbone is. Okay? Your collarbone would be in front here like so. Your pec muscle would be coming out like so, over top of your rib cage, like that. Your ribs, they come out. And remember, they're going this way, around the body, right? The back comes out and in, into the obliques. Okay. Your abdomen. Your first abdomen's right about here. Second abdomen right about here, where your belly button forms. Next abdomen right here. You've got your love handle right here. Right over top of your pelvic bone. Okay. Forms that nice edge. And from this angle, we really can't see I'll push it out a little bit for us, right down into the crotch area. And give him a little bit of a bulge there. His nipple would be right there. So now let's look at that. Our lines. Do you see? So, muscle, skin, they're wrapping around the rib cage. They're forming this beautiful relationship where they wrap over top of the love handle muscle, which is wrapping over top of your pelvic bone. Right? We haven't drawn the butt. We haven't drawn the shoulders. Now you see how the chest muscle wraps around on the side, down into the chest. See our obliques that come in, down. We're minding perspective as we draw. Our lats, they're right up in there into our pec muscles. They wrap over top of our obliques, up and around into the back, all around the scapula. The trap muscles is in behind that, riding up to your neck. All right? And then from your collar forms your neck, and then your head would sit, yay, right about there. Okay? And we'll do this one more time for this example over here, and I'll do this one from behind. That way we can try to illustrate what that looks like a little bit. So in this case, I'll change the spine. The spine will be going like this in this instance. Okay? So let's start with back muscles and kind of show you how it's all working here. So this would be your neck. You've got trapezius muscles, like I mentioned. They stem off of your neck and they go down into your shoulder area. They also dip down into your back. They form that little hump beneath your 7th vertebrae. Okay? And then you've got your scapula muscles, so your latissimus dorsi. It comes down and it's kind of like this, and it wraps up into your shoulder, but it also connects to this point where your collarbone in front is meeting your scapula muscle. All right? Just got another one over here. Kind of wraps around like so. This is without showing the shoulder muscles at all right? In your back, you've got another set of muscles. They stem off of your rib cage. They come off your back like this, and then right into the front of your body. Your rib cage and it meet like so. Comes around. All right? Your pecs, from this angle, they'd be jutting out and sticking off your chest. All right? And then underneath those two back muscles that come to the front of your body, you've got those upside down L's that we all recognize, right? You get your spine dipping in here, spine going between those L's. That's where your hip case begins, and that's where your love handles form over top of it, and your butt begins, okay? And that's where we're cutting off the torso, right? And then the torso would come down in front like so. If we were to draw it this way, without a butt, without any legs. And if I take this away now, you see what I mean. There would be the throat. These are the back of the muscle, back of the neck muscles there, two of them side by side. Remember, once you get one side down and you understand it, then it's easier to mirror both sides. You know what I mean? So the only thing that's missing from our torso is the shoulders, okay, and the butt. All right. So we're really thinking, if we go take everything we just learned and we go back to what I showed you last week, all right, what we're really doing here is we're getting a system in our head where we're practicing this, all right? We're practicing drawing the rib cage for what it is, all right? We're always drawing it in perspective, all right? We're calculating the proper distance where the neck shape begins, which I've told you is shaped like this, all right? We're understanding how the spine wraps in the back, in and out of it. All right. We're always keeping everything in perspective. So like I mentioned, the rib cage has its own perspective. The hip case has sort of its own perspective, yet the whole entire case itself kind of sits in perspective. I know that's kind of confusing, but you gotta start breaking it up like that. It'll look better in the end, and you'll have natural balance and positioning to your poses. Okay, and once you have all that, you can basically construct the rest of your torso. You know, we know what all these circles and lines and shapes represent now. We know when we have that information down that box-wise, this is what's happening. This is what we're trying to, or this is what the art books are trying to teach us, right? See how my box, I am doing it loosely, but it is in perspective, you know? Going forward, going backward, going side to side, up and down. It's in perspective to some degree because I want my thing to have form there. So if I knock that down, we have another layer there. I can find the center of that if I really want to. Say it's right about there, and then I can start adding all my muscles and my features. Okay, so looking at my rib cage, looking at my box, I get to just kind of play with all those things I was telling you about before. There's my collarbone, there's my throat, okay, there's my chest muscle riding down into the box. All right, now next week I'll throw the shoulders and the butt on there and we'll see how it all works together. You know, so that first set of abs, obliques, and your ribs. Second set of abs, belly button, love handles coming around, everything tapering back as we go in foreshortening, as we go in perspective. Third set of abs between the love handles. Fourth set down where your pants cover. We have our V now. We have our area for our whole chest. We have our big massive love handles drawn in there now. And we've got an area for the legs to go in underneath the pelvic bone. Alright? Everything's in perspective. Okay. And I'll show you how to connect the head next week and how to proportion that properly by eyeballing it, simply eyeballing it. Oh, none of this convoluted head measuring, 8 heads, none of that crap. Anyways, you get the idea, you know. All my stuff comes out in form because I think about it this way. All right, so it's not saying you come away from the lesson today and you draw it this way or you go through the lesson this way or anything. It's just a means of thinking about it differently, you know. So when we come back, I'll throw the shoulders and the butt on. I'll show you how they start to get affected by the tilt of the collar, you know. Your collar isn't obviously always just sitting there perfectly stretched out across your chest. So, you know, second you move an arm, it begins to change. But I can show you easy ways to think about that too. Anyhow, if this helped, let me know. I can always go back and reiterate stuff. That's 30 minutes. I'll chop some of this up, try to make it a little shorter. I hope you learned something today. Stay tuned for more lessons and updates on a book coming from me and my writer very, very soon. Have a great day. Prosper, my beautiful audience. Peace.